Codecraft, Under the Hood with Blizzard Engineering, Part 1.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for those who are watching at home on the virtual ticket. My name is Jonathan Moonshaw. I'm an engineering manager on the World of Warcraft team, and I'm going to be moderating this panel of 5 awesome engineers. Before we kick things off, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Go ahead.
My name is Cody Pleppel. I'm a gameplay programmer on Heroes of the Storm, and I've been at Blizzard for about 3 years.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brenna Moore. I'm a technical lead on Battle.net. I've been at Blizzard for about 9.5 years.
Hi, my name's Omar Gonzalez. I'm an engineer on the World of Warcraft team, and I've been with Blizzard for almost 15 years.
Hi, I'm Bill Warnicki from the Overwatch team. I've been at Blizzard for about 6.5 years.
And I'm Ryan Karg. I'm a group technical architect in service technologies, and I've been at Blizzard about 12 years.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. So we will be taking questions from the audience for this panel. But before we do that, I'm going to ask each of them a question just so that everyone kind of gets a sense of what these people do and give you kind of a sense of the kind of questions that they're going to be able to answer. So I'm going to start off with you, Cody. You said you're on the Heroes of the Storm team.
Yep.
And you said gameplay, right?
Yep.
So how much effect do you have on the final abilities and the gameplay of the heroes?
So I have a little bit and a lot at the same time. So I don't make any of the design choices for the heroes. I don't tell the designer what he should make or what he shouldn't make. But what I do is work with them to build design space. And what that really means is, let's say, the most recent example is Junkrat. If the designer wants a cool bouncing grenade or he wants physics in our game, my job is to help design the systems that he could use to build it repeatedly over and over again in new and different ways.
All right. Awesome. Brenna, you said you work on Battle.net. So I guess that basically means you work on the desktop app, right?
No. A bunch of you guys might have seen the Battle.net Social What's Next panel. It was earlier, there about 1:30 today, where a bunch of our project people talked about a lot about the social features that are coming up. We had some representation from our web and mobile team as well, and we work with those guys a lot. But Battle.net is actually a much, much larger department than you might think. So once you have the desktop app, you can chat with people, right? That's our client team. Our accounts and commerce team is letting you actually purchase things. That's all the shop stuff. Once you've bought something, the downloading it, make sure it's getting to your computer OK. That's distribution. All of that's still Battle.net. Once you've actually got that game and you log in, you're playing it, that's our game service team. Those guys also work with the game teams here so that the game servers can talk to you as well. And I don't actually work on any of those teams, because Battle.net actually has a bunch of other stuff for build systems that even service tech uses. There's a data platform and a data team that Overwatch went live with that might come up. And some automated testing that shows up in both Heroes and World of Warcraft. So our team specifically is build and deployment and development, that kind of stuff.
Cool, thank you. Omar, you work on World of Warcraft.
Yes.
So in Legion, we've had a lot of positive feedback about the Mythic Plus system. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works under the hood?
I'd be really happy to. It was one of my favorite systems to work on. I had originally worked on the challenge mode system, so it was a great pleasure to work on this Mythic Plus system. And what ends up happening on the back end is it kind of all starts with this keystone items that we drop for players when they complete a regular Mythic dungeon. But just before we give this item to this player, we have to imprint it with a few extra properties. We roll some dice to determine which map this keystone actually leads to, and our design team actually is who decides what maps are eligible, and the engineering side, we do the dice rolling to figure out which one they're actually going to get. The next thing to figure out on this keystone is what level it's going to be. We record sort of a high watermark of what's the highest level every player has completed, and then we run a formula, again, that the designers have defined to determine, given their previous high watermark, what is their next keystone level going to be. Finally, we allow the option of affixes or modifiers to also be imprinted on this keystone. This is, again, where we coordinate with the design team. They determine what all the possible affixes are and under what conditions and at what levels they can appear. So we figure out, based on what combinations are eligible, roll some dice, and then mark that on the keystone. Once we hand that to the player, they can take that keystone into the appropriate dungeon and socket it into the pedestal and get the system running. At that point, that dungeon has read everything about this keystone and has made that information to every single other game system in that dungeon. So every creature, every spell, every trap knows what's turned on and what's not. And this allows the design team to kind of modify the dungeon based on both the level and what affixes or properties are turned on in that particular dungeon. The Dungeoneers, in this case, continue to the end of the dungeon. We then spawn some chests, and because that whole world knows the original keystone, we also know how to properly reward the players based on how quickly they completed it and at what level. And that's most of the life cycle of the Mythic Plus system.
Cool, thank you. So Bill, you said Overwatch, right? So can you tell us what a patch day is like for the Overwatch team?
Total chaos.
Okay.
And that's it.
Ryan, no.
That's it. No, it's not really that crazy. Overwatch is new technology, and that's helped us a lot in what we're able to do with our patch days. So I'm not sure how many people here in the audience are familiar with red-blue type deployments. Overwatch is one of the first games at Blizzard to use a red-blue deployment. So our patch day really starts days, weeks before we're going to release that content live to all you players. And this is really powerful for us. We're able to, if today you're playing on what might be the red-colored servers, we might be preparing with Moira or Blizzard World on the blue side servers in a full production environment. So that means our QA teams, our producers, our game designers are able to hop on that environment and make sure things work. And this is cool. You think, well, you have QA environments, you can test there. But our interactions with systems like Service Tech, checking those interactions in a production environment saves us a lot of configuration issues and problems that otherwise we might not discover until the actual patch day. So there's a lot of use of systems that Battle.net has built in terms of getting our builds created, packaged up, not only for the client, but also the server, pushed out to your computer, and also propped out to our servers all over the world. And then on patch day, we're ready to go. We hit a button, and that will sort of mark that build live and make it available to all of you. Now, hopefully, if it's not actually total chaos, we can kick back and we watch Twitch. We watch people stream and play and have fun, and we hop in and queue for whatever the content is as well so we can experience it. And if it doesn't go well, that's a different story.
OK, so before I ask Ryan a question, I want to quickly invite anyone who has a question in the audience to head over to your right over there, and that's where we'll be taking the audience questions from. So before that, Ryan, what challenges have you faced scaling the support infrastructure from just the classic games and WoW to the current and growing catalog of games we have now?
Sure. So some introduction for service technologies. We are responsible for all of the technology that drives the customer support experience. So most visibly, that would be the support website, where you can look at our self-service articles, our self-service options, submit help requests, and review those. We also maintain and create the internal tooling that customer service agents use in all of our regional offices to handle those support requests. And we also have internal systems like our complaints and penalty platform that helps to drive player behavior that's conducive to the community that we want to create. And so we started out initially not supporting any games. We were just supporting purchases in the Battle.net platform when it first came out, and started to then support World of Warcraft as our first game. And then we brought on StarCraft 2. And both of those were very specific to the games. There was one way that we did things for World of Warcraft. There was a way that we did things for StarCraft 2. And doing that for 2 games is not a terrible amount of overhead. But as we started to get more and more games on, we started to feel the same pains that really the rest of the company was feeling of being a truly multi-franchise company. And so you can get better at having to do more work. That means getting repeatable processes and patterns and established ways of doing things. But really, the greatest way is just to not do so much work. And that is achieved by us by creating platforms that all of the games can use to integrate in the features that they need, and then we only need to support that one platform and provide an easy way for all of the games to then integrate in. And Battle.net as well creates, has moved to a bunch of platforms as well, which we support that one platform, and all of the games and programs can then support that.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. So it looks like we have someone ready with a question. So go ahead, please.
You were talking about red-blue deployments earlier.
Yeah.
Could you talk a bit about how the patch deployments on other games, especially World of Warcraft and Hearthstone, have sort of taught you about what the pain points have been, what the experiences you've shared across all teams have been?
Sure. So my experience, like I mentioned, I've been at Blizzard for about 6.5, 7 years, and I've spent my time entirely on the Overwatch team or Project Titan as a precursor to Overwatch. So I haven't directly learned a lot of lessons that those other teams have gone through, but I do feel the things we're really looking to avoid with red-blue deployments were surprises during the time of our deployment, and also downtime. I play a lot of World of Warcraft. I have for my entire, since it's existed. Yeah. And trying to get to a place where we have no downtime deploys was a goal for Overwatch right from the outset. And I think that's a company lesson learned and something we've worked towards. So really, to answer your question, we want no downtime. We don't want surprises when we deploy. And it is really hard to have an internal test environment that is exactly like production, especially at the scale that we operate at. So red-blue deployments help us a lot in that case. And you might have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, World of Warcraft isn't there at a full red-blue deployment yet, but we have learned a lot from the Overwatch team, and we're using very similar patterns. In more recent patch milestones, our downtime that we usually take for deploying a patch has gone from what used to be 8 hours down to less than 1 hour. And one of the ways we've achieved that is kind of a semi-red-blue, where we will actually start copying over and making deploys into our production environments while the rest of the production environment that you all are playing are still running. Then what we do is we do turn the services off for a moment, and then we just make a switch, do a few checks internally to make sure everything looks good, and then re-enable access to the rest of the public.
Awesome. Thank you for the question.
Hi. As someone who's going to start looking for a job soon, do you have any tips for resumes or to show off how efficient you are in coding or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I just got into the industry a couple years ago, so it's pretty fresh. So I mean, the first thing, just for Blizzard, the biggest thing that I've noticed on our team, and I think it's kind of across the company, is a culture fit. Right? Do we want to work with you? Are you fun to work with? But the second part of it that you're getting to is how do I show off my abilities? And it's really easy to catch that passion when we're talking to you on the phone, when we're seeing your GitHub or your portfolio, anything like that. So the biggest thing that I did when I was a student was side projects. When somebody wanted to make a game, I said, cool, I'll program for you, you design it, that sounds great. I put it all in open source, and when I called them in, I applied for an internship. It's actually how I got my job here. They checked that out, and they're like, hey, tell us about this crazy thing you did. I'm like, it was crazy. And I explained the steps we took, the mistakes that I made, which you're going to make a ton of. And I think, to be honest, that was the part that really made them feel like I was a good candidate, because I listened to the mistakes that I'd made, my team had made, and I learned from them. And I think that's a huge part of it, too.
When you're working on projects, too, I would say consider the scope of what you're working on for personal projects. Totally. I think we can all dream big and want to do huge things, but those might not be able to be accomplished in the period of time that you have available. We're really looking for completed efforts. Yep. So even if that means you do something a bit smaller, take it all the way through and actually finish it when you show it to us if you apply.
That's cool. Yeah, and one final thing I'd say is write a cover letter. We actually get quite a few applications that come in without a cover letter, and it goes a long way, a cover letter, because it tells us a little bit about you, who you are, which is actually quite important.
I mean, I geeked out big in my cover letter. Like, it started with like Intara Dune and was all about the prototype. It was bad, but I mean, it worked out.
But it worked.
Yeah, and one other thing too, just to my answer was tilted toward gameplay, but we have so many positions that make Blizzard actually put out a game. Like, the job that I do is the smallest portion really to get it out to players. So it doesn't matter what engineering you're doing. I think it all applies.
Cool. Thank you for the question.
Hi, my question's for Omar. I'd like to know more about what was involved with introducing affixes to Mythic Plus dungeons. You know, what kind of difficulty was there in scaling, you know, adding more trash and stuff like that?
A lot of that was not necessarily an engineering challenge. Most of that is simply setting up the hooks that allowed the designers to determine when an affix is present. It's actually the content creators and the designers that apply meaning and semantics to an affix. So from a purely code and data perspective, they're just numbers to us. In code, we don't really implement any of the volcanic or tyrannical mechanics in the source code. All we just say is affix number 5 is active in this dungeon. And what the designers do is they modify the spells and the abilities with additional checks. In our content creation tools, they can either input data in the database or they can actually run scripts in Lua, and what they can do is add additional conditional functionality. So they can add branches that say, if affix 5 is present, then inject this additional modifier or cast this spell. They have hooks on events, so when a creature dies, it does any number of things. They just add another thing it can do if the affix in this case is present, where it might spawn something on death, or the spawn regions might have a base number of spawns that they create, and then a conditional additional spawn if whatever affix they add to the game is present. So much of that is on the shoulders of our design team. It really allows them to have the flexibility to create these really interesting experiences, and from an engineering perspective, it's not any sort of a burden. We just kind of give them the tools, and they create the gameplay that's compelling for you all to play.
Great. Thank you for the question.
Hi, guys. I wanted to ask if you could briefly give some explanation of some of the tools that you guys use for internal communication. In particular, with the increasing prevalence of workers being remote or in satellite offices, how do you help to keep them successful and well connected with the rest of the team?
Yeah, in service technologies, we have offices in Irvine, in Austin, and also in our European offices in Cork and in Versailles. And so we have lots of time zones, we have lots of remote workers where we need to have that coordination. And it is a challenge. There's definitely extra overhead in that. And so we do all have cameras and instant messaging and video software for handling that, and setting up meetings and scheduled times where people are available across the different offices is important to have those touch points on there. But it is a challenge. You know, it's something that we're still trying to improve on, and we're looking for the best ways that we can help to achieve that shared understanding of what we're doing, and trying to simulate the water cooler conversations that happen that are valuable but can't happen across offices.
Battle.net ends up working globally as well, quite a bunch. And so one of the, I think, biggest, most easiest things we end up doing a lot is saying, hey, who can sort of show up a little bit earlier, stay a little bit late, to work with somebody in a different office, maybe one of our localization teams, maybe. Additionally, just seconding like the sort of array of communication tools we have right now. You guys type to each other in game all the time. You know exactly what group chats are like, and texting with everybody else while you're getting ready. And so we do a lot of the exact same thing. Or just having a place to share ideas and share things. So email threads are popular, but also just a content repository that we can say, hey, I put this on, a repo, go and check it out. Or, hey, I put this PR in, but I'm going to go home. So when you get in, in a few hours, because you're on the other side of the planet, can you take a look at it for me and just leave some comments?
One of the things that we do, I mean, game teams aren't generally global, right? But one of the things that I really like what we do is we have project pages. So when we have so many engineers in the game at any given time that we'll pitch up some idea, we'll write up what we're going to do, and then it's a place where we all can kind of like scratch board about what we want to see happen there. And so like it doesn't have to happen at the same time. It can be asynchronous whenever they have time to do it, and that helps a lot too. I mean, I think it would help globally as well.
Cool. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much.
Hey, I had a question about World of Warcraft and the APIs and events and what kind of decisions you make about changing the names or adding new API calls and events. I work a lot with the Mythic Plus system, and all of those events are still challenge mode start, challenge mode end, as well as the newest CMID. And there's also some weird interactions with scenario POI update and world state timer start. And I feel like the system's so popular, there could be some more information that's available in a cleaner fashion.
So I assume you're referring to the UI API, right? The LUI. Okay. So that's handled by the UI team. Usually they build the APIs based on their needs initially for the base UI that we're going to add to the game. I'm not terribly familiar with the exact details. I do know that they solicit feedback from the community and add-on authors, and they will, based on requests for additional information, but if there are any sort of bugs or any sort of functionality breaking, certainly report that, let us know, and we can get on that. And as far as requests for additional information, we're certainly open to making changes based on the add-on community feedback.
Thank you for the question.
Hi. My question is about the games that require really low latency, so StarCraft, Heroes, and Overwatch. I almost never have a laggy experience. And my question is, what do you guys do to make sure that the matches you guys create are really low latency for all the players involved? And how does that affect matchmaking, if at all?
I can talk a little bit about that from Overwatch. Overwatch is very fortunate. I mentioned new technology in my intro a little earlier, but part of that new technology isn't just the game engine that we're built on. It's a lot of Blizzard infrastructure that's grown. Way back in the day, a lot of our infrastructure was based out of maybe one data center with one point of presence or connection to the internet. And now we have a global distributed backbone and data centers running all over the world. So for Overwatch, it's really critical for us to evaluate where players are coming from, what our current network topology looks like for Blizzard, what partnerships we need to make with internet providers. In terms of peering, network peering is really important for us, and our network team is very proactive in making those relationships. So it's really about understanding where do we need to put servers, where are people playing from, and how do we try to get an internet topology that makes the most sense to get you the lowest latency. And that's been a big challenge because we are a little bit different in terms of our network model than World of Warcraft or StarCraft. We're very sensitive to packet loss and ping, and also stability of the connection. So the Overwatch team directly, but also our network infrastructure team, have put a lot of effort into analyzing that and trying to make it better. So I'm glad you have a good ping, but for the others who maybe not, we're definitely working on it, and feel free to chat with me after and we can talk more.
Yeah, one of the other things that sort of plays a part in that is the data collection from just client statistics and metrics and things like that. Lately, we've added some improvements that just make us a lot more aware of sort of when you guys are having some of those problems, enabling us to sort of be more proactive about going after that stuff faster. So if we do lose a connection somewhere, a tunnel closes somewhere, we are starting to learn about that much faster, and having our network guys being able to respond to that.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question.
Hello, my name's David. I'm a systems engineer, and I was curious if any of you have programmed in Rust, and if you have, what your perspective would be on it from a video games perspective.
I have not programmed in Rust yet.
Anyone?
I have not.
No, have not.
C++. Hey.
Yeah.
Well, I've been doing a lot of work in it this year. It's a wonderful language. I would recommend that you check it out.
So, I mean, we talk about it at my open a lot, actually. We have our eyes on it totally, but we're just like, Heroes releases content all the time, and I'm like, cool, Rust is cool. C++, I got to make stuff. So, like, someday, I hope.
I think one other interesting part with that is we are all technologists and very excited by new technology. I've written a lot of Erlang in my past, and I don't know how many people here are familiar with Erlang.
So we just hiss?
Some fans like
Okay, well, I'm really lucky because I would actually be able to hire you all then. It can be very challenging to hire if you use a language that's maybe up and coming or something that's more esoteric. So C++ is very much a standard. We do use a lot of other languages. C#, Python, C++ are very prevalent. But to make a full investment into something like Rust would be really, really challenging and risky. So, yeah.
Yeah, given that there's a large amount of established code bases that most of us are working on, there's not always a greenfield opportunity to start with something new, but having there are definitely smaller projects that are starting with new languages. There's a group that is working on some newer, smaller projects in Go. There's definitely the desire to explore these things in areas where it's less, the opportunity to learn and see what works best is there for a smaller, less risky project, something internal. So,
Cool. Thank you for the question, and you got the next one ready?
Hey, Bill, you mentioned that patch day can be a chaos for the Overwatch team, and I imagine there were plenty of bugs, like the Diva bug that we had to shut it down. So this is a question for the other teams as well. How do you learn from these bugs? Is there a process that teams follow after this kind of thing happens?
Yeah, absolutely. We do a lot of triage initially to understand what's the situation, where are we at, what do we need to do to handle this problem right now? That's the focus, right? But after that's done and we've managed to mitigate the issue immediately, we do a full post-mortem process. And that post-mortem can actually be small and confined maybe just to the Overwatch team. If we look at something like, where did we go wrong with Diva? How did this get introduced? Let's talk with QA. How did it get through that process? Was it something that happened on the live operations side, which was actually the case for Diva? And we go through that and make process changes typically to address that after. When we talk at a larger company scale, we do incident management, incident review, and follow what is, if you go look up that process, pretty well established, and we have an operations center that really manages that at the scale of all of Blizzard. And we would do, process around that.
Yeah, I mean, another big part of it for us is we call them escapes in our team. So if we didn't catch them internally and they get live, we're like, oh, that's not great. But with the amount of complexity in the data and in the code for Heroes of the Storm, it's inevitable. We're going to miss some weird interaction, like 0 to avoid prisons, and then we added a new thing, and now what is happening with void prison? And like Bill said, it's totally a process of like, okay, we messed up. Like, how do we fix this from now on? So we learn from it.
Thank you.
Great, thank you for the question.
Hi, my question is for Omar. I've spent a lot of time working on legacy systems and bringing them forward, modernizing a lot of frustrations, but some good moments too. And I'm just kind of curious as to insights and experiences that you've had bringing World of Warcraft, forward over the last decade plus.
So yes, I've worked on the World of Warcraft code base for a very long time, and there can be a lot of challenges. What we find a lot of times is designers will come forward with all these new ideas and new things and new features that they want to add to the game, and we're all jazzed up and excited as well. We want to add them, and we add them on top of the existing system, but everything that we've built before still has to continue running, and this cycle just repeats month after month, year after year, and we build systems on top of systems on top of systems. It's important to kind of schedule some time to look at what systems work and what systems are working well. And once we see an idea or a feature come through the pipe that's kind of pushing existing systems beyond where they were originally designed to go, we take a look at that and re-examine, well, okay, is this a matter of, do we pull this whole system out and replace it with some fully featured thing, or can we just kind of add a little bit more scaffolding? Because if we're constantly pulling systems out every few months and trying to rebuild them, we just don't have the development velocity to continue producing content. So oftentimes, it's just a matter of experience and understanding, well, where is this new feature going to go? What is the longevity of it? What is the stress on the existing systems? One of the important things to remember is WoW is sort of this living code base. We really don't have the option of tossing it all out and starting over. We always have to make these gradual evolutionary steps, and we try to balance new features with, okay, we also need to go back and kind of improve some underlying APIs or and luckily, the design team and the production team and all the rest of the team is also very cognizant of the benefits of coming back and doing some refactors. Because again, a lot with the code base as old as WoW, when they want to add feature 25, and we have to say, well, you can't because it would violate feature 13. Then they're going like, oh, right, there's the they start pulling out their hair. But again, because it's we're all one Blizzard team, we're all kind of unified. We all want to make sure we deliver the best Blizzard experience. We also get the rest of the team on board with updates where they're necessary, and where they're not necessary, we'll just make something scaffolded, a few more Band-Aids, keep it running. The most important thing is WoW has to keep running. Yeah.
An interesting thing I've seen is that there's the game teams. There's some service tech products that it would be like an enterprise application that are 10 years old plus. There are BattleNet systems that have that monolith that has been established that was perfect when it was this tiny little thing, and now 10 years later, or 5 years later, it's this giant thing. But the same evolution has happened with all of those services where, like Omar said, it's got to keep running, but there's this little bit here, and you can pinch that off, and you can pull that out, and it's now separate, it's now well-defined, and it can evolve on its own. And you see that with the WoW infrastructure has pulled those things out. BattleNet services have pulled those things out. On the service tech side, we're all going through those same things. It's almost like it's some kind of like engineering best practice that you should be looking at doing all of the time, regardless of what it is that you're working on, be it a game, a back-end account system, or any other engineering system.
Great. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, hi. My question next month is Amazon reInvents conference. Has a great vibe to it, just like BlizzCon. I remember last year I did meet some Blizzard employees while I was there. So just curious if anyone can talk about kind of your guys' leverage of public cloud services, and what are the things that you do on public cloud versus what are the things that you engineer your own infrastructure for, and what are some of the lessons learned or experiences you've had so far with that?
Yeah, Overwatch has been one of the first teams to leverage what we would just call the hybrid cloud. So we have our private internal Blizzard cloud, and we have public cloud providers as well. It's really powerful. It lets us go into regions that maybe otherwise wouldn't be accessible for us. And especially, I mentioned before with Overwatch, we're a very latency-sensitive game. So being able to reach areas that we wouldn't be able to have a full Blizzard data center in is very, very powerful for us. We have a core technology, core systems group that manages both our private cloud and also any public cloud partnerships. And they're awesome to work with and really help us, at least on the game team, worry less about the details of the underlying infrastructure and trying to build one unified interface for us to not care if we're talking to this API or this other API. We can just simply deploy Overwatch services there. So that's been our use for it, at least.
Yeah. Earlier when I mentioned that BattleNet was actually a whole bunch of things, BattleNet is also the cloud management. So our internal private cloud, and as well as partnering with some of our more low-level infrastructure IT teams, that's actually doing our maintaining the accounts with things like AWS. And so we are also constantly looking at features on offer, or potentially even committing back if it's an open sourcer type of thing. And so seeing what game teams need, and really the one thing that you mentioned, Bill, was what regions are available, right? So as it turns out, we don't have a data center next to all of you. Like we try, sort of, but there's a lot of you. And in some places, AWS is better positioned to do that.
Cool. Thanks.
Hey, hello. I just have a question about file management, because you are big teams with some guys for the artistic, Ray, sounds, coding also. So how did you manage that? Because I'm also a programmer, and it's very, crazy, even if you are just 3 people to do that. So I don't imagine with thousands. So how did you do that?
It's crazy. Well, first, I think we're really fortunate at Blizzard in that on the game teams, and I think on Battle.net as well, we have great producers, I think project managers, who really help unblock us when we're working on stuff, to help us work with other people, to help us gel our time schedules or whatever. It's really great there. On the individual level, we have some guys on our team who are machines. Like, I can't code like them. Like, they come into work, and I'm like, hey, how you doing? They're like, I'm great. And then their headphones go on, and like 10 hours later, like, I'm done. I'm like, cool, see ya, man. A lot of code. And I'm more of like a burst coder, so I'm usually the guy in my team who's talking to people on the other teams, like, what do you need from us? What can I do for you? Here's some stuff we'll bring for you. Here's some scheduling stuff. And then I have like 2 hours of like I'm coding my stuff, and I'm like, I'm done, because I can't focus as well as other people can. So I think it's all about the team kind of building that, like, pieces, I guess is the way I would describe it. So we don't want 9 machines, but we definitely want people who can interact with other teams well.
Yeah. I also, like, as a technical lead, as a team lead, basically, like, my responsibility is to make sure that my team can work as fast as possible, that they are unblocked, that if they need something, or if they're confused about something, if they're unclear about something, maybe, okay, we totally know where this feature is going to go, but what are we really doing after that? That's the kind of things that it's on me and on some of us to provide, so that there's a lot of clarity around that, and that they have a clear picture of, okay, we're rushing for this thing because then we're going to go here and then we're going to go here. So not only do you sort of have a lot of confidence in the things that you're doing, a lot of clarity around that, is that you sort of can plan ahead. You're like, oh, okay, if I have to go here afterwards, I should probably make this type of decision instead. Granted, those things vary, depending on whatever it is, but having like the production you mentioned, just having the support around that to be feeling, okay, I'm going to go do this, and I know that other things are happening, and I don't have to worry about it.
Great. Thank you for the question.
I know we all love bugs here. What are some interesting bugs you guys have had to deal with?
The question that always comes up.
I had 2 of them that were really weird that got to PTR. One of them, I made the armor system, or programmed it for Heroes of the Storm. And for a while there, you could become completely invincible. Or you could just kill anybody in one shot with Zarya. And I was like, oh, OK, that got live. Finding that was really weird, because the tech designers have a scripting language in our engine where they can kind of do whatever they want to a point. We've really tried to harden against any inputs from them, because they can do bad stuff. But one of the things we never considered was if you're shooting like a beam at somebody and there's a period where that beam shoots damage off, if they just like set the beam to 0, what would happen? Or the period to 0, what would happen? And we were like, oh, nothing. It would just not work totally. And it worked great. Like it killed people. So that was really weird to debug, because it was live and people were like, it's Friday, what's going to happen? I'm like, I don't know, I'll stay till it's figured out. We'll get to it. But that was tough. It was interesting.
So I don't know if this counts as a bug or not, but we'll call it an interesting use of code by a very creative designer who wanted to implement acceleration in World of Warcraft. Right now, usually when you hit forward, you start moving, and you have instant acceleration. You're always moving at the right velocity. Well, what this designer did is he built a special aura that would periodically change your speed based on how long you had spent moving. So the longer you had been moving, it would ramp up your current speed. So he was able to mimic acceleration in our game whose movement system was never built out for this. It was interesting, wacky, creative. We absolutely could not have gone live with a feature built out that way, but it just kind of speaks to the creativity of our design team and what they can do in the systems that we as engineers can provide for them.
All right, I think. Any more
I
bugs?
could talk about like 9 million more bugs. Like, I just made grenades. The grenades physics, man. Why did I do it? Like, for a while, it would like bounce against a wall, but it was supposed to ricochet. Clearly, you could see it, the reflection, and it bounced back at me, and I was like, cool, cool, cool. And then I had to drive. I mean, and then for a while there, I shot it, and it would blow up into the sky so high that I had no idea what I had done. I was like, the math is right. Why is this flying in the air? And it had just been because I actually typed a hard-coded 100 and forgot that I'd done that. And I was like, cool, okay.
All right, thank you for the question.
Hi. Yeah, so I've played most of the games like, StarCraft, Warcraft, Diablo, all of that. So my question is, other than Battle.net and the game rendering engine itself, what is the biggest common, component or service that might be running across all of the game, or is there no such thing?
Battle.net. I mean, I know you said other than that, but like, I mean, everything that the game teams do, like, we try and make commonality for all of our user experiences, right? Like, that's our goal. So like, anything we focus on is generally like trying to leverage shared technology like Battle.net and like service tech, because it does provide that experience. We don't, I think for a long time, we didn't share all that game code too much. Like just recently, we started sharing our pathing code or our behavior tree code for Heroes of the Storm. One of our engineers built out an awesome new system, completely built it, decoupled from our engine itself, and now is like live on our internal GitHub to show off and help other teams use it if they want to use it. So like we try and do that sort of thing, but generally, like you named it, we use central technology a lot.
All right, thank you for the question.
Hi, this is probably also a cliche question, but I was wondering what kind of AI are you guys applying to your games and to your system, and if you also do research into the new technologies that are going out and seeing how you can apply them to the different games and services as well.
I can talk about this a bit. You guys?
Yeah, if you guys don't.
Okay, so two things we're doing that are cool. Heroes of the Storm, originally the AI system was this giant scripted state machine that was not hierarchical. So you just had like 200 states, and you're like, we're in state 49. And I'm like, yep. Mercs. It was called Mercs. And I was like, I don't know what that means. So we changed that to, I shouldn't say we, one of the guys on my team worked diligently for a year to make a new, completely independent, goal-driven behavior state machine that like builds goals dynamically and assigns units and like looks at the strategic map to do really interesting, cool plays. And it's getting better and better. Like they gain queue, all sorts of stuff. But I think more to your question, we kind of leverage machine learning to do matchmaking. The Heroes of the Storm What's Next panel is happening right now. Thank you for being here. But they talk about it at length, actually, about how we use that kind of, we kind of analyze what's happening at the higher level of the gameplay to analyze what you should be doing and kind of help you match make better into better games or find a better ranking. So.
Yeah, in service technologies for your support tickets that come in, right now we will look at the text that you provide for that, and based on that, we will match that to a list of internal articles for what it is you're asking questions about. And we can use that to help route them to agents who have skills and are able to address those issues more quickly. And that's a system that, as we're getting confidence in it, we're going to start exposing that as suggestions on the website as well of, you've asked about this thing. We have these support articles that you may be able to solve this yourself. So if you can get this resolved without needing to wait for a representative to help you with the issue, then we can extend things out into that area as well.
I think people have asked about technology we've shared across Blizzard, but a lot of what we do is knowledge share. So Overwatch's focus was really the player versus player experience. We have a pretty limited AI versus AI experience right now. So this is a case where our AI engineers would be very likely to talk to groups on, like Heroes of the Storm, to understand and look at things like goal-based AI-driven systems, so we could look to implement or modify our AI systems in that way. So that's a place more where we would share, even if we don't take their exact code out of their servers and use it, just talking about the strategies and implementations, challenges, and how they overcame those can be really useful and informative for our engineers.
To be honest, we actually went to the Overwatch team and looked at their AI systems. That's not a joke.
I was trying to be nice.
We're like, what do you guys have there? We don't really use it, but it's pretty cool. We're like, cool, we're going to use it, thanks.
For this last expansion, the World of Warcraft team decided to hop in on this knowledge sharing. We got a lot of useful information from Bill and the rest of Team 4 and Heroes as well. One of the upcoming features in the next expansion, Islands, we're actually going to be able to leverage a lot of AI techniques that currently exist in, say, Overwatch's bot matches to kind of provide compelling PvE experiences that aren't scripted and aren't identical every time you go into them. The idea with some of the new technology and the new features in the next expansion is going to be AI actors that will react to what you as players are trying to do on those islands in a much more believable and less mechanical and repetitive pattern.
Is that true? That's awesome.
He just made it up.
Just winging it up
You
here.
missed the, there was a, if you want to check on, if you didn't catch it already on the virtual ticket, the deep dive on World of Warcraft goes into a bit of detail on that.
Sweet.
Great, thank you for the question.
Oh, sorry. Hey, so I do a lot of work with SimCraft, with World of Warcraft, and some other stuff that does, you do a lot of pull requests from the online API. There's a lot of new systems coming out, and I was kind of curious if there's a way for the developers of these things to communicate with you guys easier to get some more online API interaction to kind of help that part of the community grow. So
I don't know that I can make any promises. I actually have downloaded SimCraft and see what's going on, and there's a pretty close reproduction of the simulations that are going on our real simulation servers. However, I understand by making comparison, they're not identical, and therefore results, your mileage may vary in your SimCrafts when you're comparing that to what you're seeing in game. I do certainly know our class design team is very, they're always keeping a watch on the SimC forums, and they understand that they want to empower the community to be able to make these rich tools. However, I don't think necessarily that, short of us simulating the data on our simulators and handing them back, I don't know about the feasibility about that. But certainly the other half of it is more detailed communication as to how the math behind these features actually work and interact with other systems. And again, the other huge difficulty in any of these simulations are how does this system interact in the presence of system B with element C also present, and even in our game, they can get very complicated and difficult to verify and validate.
Outside of SimCraft specifically, you mentioned how do you communicate easier with Blizzard, and that is a challenging problem because it's a many to one kind of a relationship. So what I found, at least for Overwatch, if you have a community like SimCraft that's passionate, people are together, you're working on that product or vision, it's very likely to get noticed and observed and have us interact with that community. So while that's not a direct, you want this feature X and we provide it, because that's challenging for us to really commit to, I would say drive forward with what your passions are, make the best out of what you have available, and likely we will notice those things and engage with you, even if it's behind the scenes and not in a feature deliver kind of relationship.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for coming tonight. I wanted to ask about careers in engineering with Blizzard, because I've noticed on the website what tends to be filling up all the slots is senior software engineering positions that require a lot of experience and what have you. I'm just wondering for someone who's maybe just like 2 years out of college with general backgrounds in mechanical and software engineering, what have you, that aren't so specialized. Like, how do you break into the industry? Like, is it possible to network you guys at this event? I just don't know how you do it because it seems to be that, it's only people with a lot of years in engineering or who went to a very select small amount of hyper gaming specialized schools that actually become engineers with you guys. And I was just wondering if you could attack that a little bit and yeah, just suggestions on that. So.
Sure. So did not go to a hyper-developed gaming school at all. I was a writer for like 5 years and was like, this job does not pay me well. And I love video games. So I looked at the back of a magazine. I went to some school in Chicago that was awesome. I got a master's degree, but it was basically a 4-year bachelor's degree compressed into 2 years. And then I applied for an internship. I got really lucky, or I was good at it, I hope. And then I got hired.
Bit of both.
A little bit of both. Here's the thing. When I applied again to come back full-time, I applied for a senior position because I didn't care that they weren't offering me an associate. I was like, I want to apply and be at Blizzard. I'm going to apply anyways. And to be honest with you, I don't know what these guys are going to say. They've been here much longer. They have better answers than I do. But we don't, like, if you're a great candidate, like, we always can talk about lowering the title down. We can talk about bringing you on the team. A lot of times you see the senior thing, it's because we're looking for a specific type of skill set to come fill in a specific gap. But, like, I did not come in with that. I came in being like, I'm eager to code, and I like fun and stuff. And they're like, yeah, we like this guy. He's great. He's going to code. It can work out like that, and you should apply anyways, because it's up to us to say, no, you're not a good fit right now. Not on to you to figure out if you should apply at all.
I feel you need to be tenacious as well. I have many friends at Blizzard who have been here even longer than I have, and many of them did not get hired on their first time they applied. They went through the process, they received feedback from that, and then tried to make improvements and get better at wherever they were lacking. So if you really believe in it, then yeah, just put in that work and keep trying.
Yeah, put in that effort. I started off in QA on the night shift because I was working on my CS degree during the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a rough couple of years, never sleeping. But on top of that, it's just being able to demonstrate this additional drive and initiative. And certainly, in addition to whatever job you have to pay the bills, working on some sort of project is also going to go a long way. The important thing about working on a project is, we mentioned this earlier, find something that you finish. A single finished project that's fleshed out to completion is worth more than a dozen good ideas that never ended up seeing the light of day. The other important thing about projects is you learn things about how to work cooperatively with other people, because that's another important value. When we're hiring, we're not just hiring based on your technical ability. When you go through a Blizzard interview, we also go through things like, what is your personality like? Are you someone that comes into work really jazzed about the surfing weekend you had, or whatever it is that you're interested in? Express it, explore it. Doesn't matter. We like passionate people who go after that, and we also hire for company fit. It's not just a bunch of individuals. We are one united team, and learning to work with other people well is an important skill to demonstrate.
Yeah. Our Blizzard careers are the people who help us, help you guys arrive, help us grow. They have a booth. They're up front. They're probably over there for those of you watching the virtual ticket. I'm pointing at your floor, but I promise, like, from where we are, there's some actual people over there on the first floor. Those are super great people to talk to about that as well.
Cool. Thank you for the question. Looks like there's no one lining up right now, so I'm going to go to a question I found on social media. How do you handle the pressure of thinking, if I mess up, I'm going to affect millions of people?
Single malt Scotch whiskey. Lots of alcohol.
Terrible lifelong. I don't. For a while, I stressed out about it a ton, actually. When I first got hired, I had mad imposter syndrome. I was like, I do not belong here. I tricked them, and I'm going to ship this code next week. And they were like, yeah, write this AI. It's going to be fine. I'm like, when is this shipped? They're like, in like a month. And I was like, cool. And I opened a book about AI and was like, what's AI? I don't think... Eventually, you kind of just recognize that, like, you can't live there mentally. You have to just kind of write the code and do your very best because you want to do the best. Like, you don't think about what's going to happen if it goes wrong, and if it does, you fix it. Like, end of the day.
being in live operations has been an intense experience, especially going through the Overwatch launch was kind of crazy. I would not sleep very much, and I remember looking at our concurrency, like how many people are online, and you hit this weird moment where you just kind of go through the peak of the day, and that line hits whatever that number's at, and it sits there. And if that number happens to line up with any sort of round number, you're like, what is broken? This is some weird cap, right? Like, we just, like, there's queues somewhere. I remember on our launch week running around to our server team, being like, you guys broke something. There's definitely a problem here. It's been like this for 5 minutes. And they're like, Bill, just chill out. You'll be fine. It is intense, but ultimately we're making games, and we have an amazing supportive community, which is all of you here, and we appreciate that a lot. You're patient with us. We try to communicate back and let you know what's happening and where we go wrong, and then help celebrate the places where things go right, and it's perfect. So it can be hard, but it's worth it.
One game we don't play is we don't play the blame game. Yeah. When something goes wrong, it just goes wrong. That's okay. Look at the problem, think it through, solve it, get the players back in the game, and just move on.
Yeah, when we do have things like that, you would sort of be amazed at, like, we draw people from networking, we draw people from infrastructure, we draw people, like, we don't even know what the problem is yet, but just sort of everybody sort of gets in one area so we can talk, we can chat. Somebody asked about the communication earlier, just sort of everybody, a representative at least from each team jumps in and everybody says, okay, this is what we're seeing, this is what we're seeing, so that we can sort of track that down so we can identify it and figure out how to solve it. Yep. Knowing that those people are there to help out if something does happen, well, you could drink, or you could just trust the rest of the people.
And on the other end of that, when we do have those postmortems, that's something that's open to the entire company, and that allows everyone to then learn from those issues. And so as an entire company, we're getting better at making it so that failures aren't as impactful, and that we have quicker rollbacks if things do end up going south, or we have better telemetry so that we can see when problems are starting to happen before they become a big issue, and we can get ahead of it and fix those things. And so as a company, we're continuing to improve the information we have, the practices that we have in place, so that there's less fear of that failure, and there's more of an opportunity for people to learn from that so that we don't have them in the future.
All right, so we've got time for one last question, and we got someone here to ask it.
What type of tools are you using to ensure code integrity, ensuring the currying of code into production is exactly what you want, making sure that new instances spun up are exactly the same? Are you using internal tools? Are you using off-the-shelf tools for stuff like that?
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. A little bit of column C, which is we took one thing and mashed another thing into it. A lot of static analysis goes into commits, stuff before it even gets merged into the actual code base. We have a phenomenal functional QA team that Omar came up through as well. We have a lot of people who get to review that kind of stuff, obviously, and then
we're ramping up integration of the use of Clang Tidy to kind of go through the WoW code base, and we've run a pass through that, and we found that super useful. It's found a lot of patterns to just kind of go through and fix or repair or offer suggestions. Another off-the-shelf tool we use is Code Collab. We use that for code reviews. That's something that we've integrated with recently, and that's kind of helped streamline the code review process that we have on our team.
I don't know if one part of that question was how do we know every instance we spin up is the same. For Overwatch, a server package is sort of an immutable archive. So that's all controlled with MD5s of the data archives or the binaries. And on server start, we're verifying the integrity. It is true we're copying our stuff all over the world, and that's not flawless. So that's how we're checking on that end.
All right. So I think that's all the time we have today, I'm afraid. If you are hungry for more, then there is another Codecraft panel tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. But for now, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us, and I'd like to thank the panelists. We've got Cody, Brenna, Omar, Bill, and Ryan. So thank you all.
Thank you for attending Codecraft, Under the Hood with Blizzard Engineering, Part 1. Up next, Community Night from the Mythic Stage.